It's starting. What happens now? Can we get a live chat? It's really, it is quite
live now. There we go.
Hey, click. Can they see me?
Oh,
Okay, right, it's back. Okay, camera. Can opening cameraman. What does this do? Turn it up. Ask guest to join broadcast the large video. They don't have to make this complicated, isn't it? Like, let's turn that off. We're not doing that. Okay, I can't see 7 viewers. But I can see how many viewers there are. Links. Okay, let's just. Okay, right. Okay, well, I'm just going to start. If you can't see my face, I apologize greatly. We're just going to start with an editing tutorial. So, if any of you guys came over from the last video, great to see you back.
there must be the chat.
Yeah, there is a chat. Oh, I can see the chat. Okay, right. This is great.
Hagen, you must be able to.
Hi. Can you see that? Right. Say something. Send in the chat.
Oh, good lord. Hello. You're in a completely different chat.
I don't know. Right, I'm going to start this video.
It's because, I think it's on because it's on Google Hangouts.
I don't care. Right, start the video. Okay, so I'm going to start this video. The idea is we're going to be showing you.
Get off that because that's really trippy.
Okay, let's go on to here. Oh god. Right, guys. And today we are going. Can you see that? Oh, for
It's a
goodness.
little bit delayed. It's a little bit delayed. Just wait.
Okay,
There
there
we go.
it is working. For those of you who are incredibly confused right now, you're about as confused as I am, but we are actually screen sharing from this computer, and we're watching it on my brother's computer just to test if it's working or not. This is the first time I've done a screen share video. Right, so the first things first, I'm going to just, here's the plan for today's video. We're going to be taking this video, this photo here, and we're going to stop laughing. We're going to be taking this photo here, and we're going to be editing this neon photo in some sort of neon color grade. Now you can see here we've got loads of different Brown and WOEFEL presets, which is the kind of look we're going for, a sort of Brown and WOEFEL color grade, where we're trying to take this neon photo and, can you mute that? We're trying to take this neon photo and really sort of jazz it up a little bit. First of all, before we get into this too much, I just want to mention to you guys, you can go ahead, I think if this has all been set up correctly, go check the link in the description and you can see the link to go and get our presets off our website. There is a whole shop pack. It's a massive sale at the moment, so go check that link out if you want to. You'll come to this page here and you can see all the information here. So definitely go ahead, check that out if you are interested. But without any further ado, let's just start with this edit. We're just going to do a live edit. I haven't actually planned this, so let's see what happens. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to kind of make this image.
I can reply to people in the chat, so we've got you and you respond.
Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a little bit bluer. So we're going to get the temperature slider and we're just going to drag it down and make it a little bit bluer there. Now, I don't really want to mess around too much with the tints because this image already has a lot of purple in it. If anything, I'm just going to drop and add some greens. First of all, the white balance I think is fairly okay, so we're not really going to mess around too much with it there. But you can see, the difference it's kind of making already. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to work on the contrast of the image. So first things first, I'm just going to add some contrast there, increase the exposure just a bit because I want to make it a little bit brighter, but not too much brighter. And then we're going to work on the shadows. Now, with this image, it's fairly well exposed already. For those of you who are wondering, I got this off wesaturate.com, so you can go ahead and get some raw photos there. You can actually download this photo and follow this edit through if you want to learn as well. So we're going to get the shadows. I'm just going to drag those up just a bit so I can kind of see the background a little bit more. And I think we've kind of made the highlights a little bit too bright. I want to be able to see a little bit more of this Pac-Man sign here. So we're going to drop the highlights not to -100, but probably about -66, I think is a good area. Now, like I say, I haven't actually planned this out much. I'm just kind of going through showing you how I would edit a neon photo to start off with, my kind of editing process to get the Brown and WOEFEL look. So the next thing is we're going to go for a little bit more contrast in the highlights and the shadows. And to do that, we're going to get the white slider, brighten up those whites just a little bit to about +43, and then crush those blacks a bit more. And you'll see we now get a lot more contrast in this image. Okay, so we're probably done with these panels here. We might just drop the clarity a bit just to make the image that a little bit smoother. You could actually increase it and kind of see more in these sort of reflections here, but the problem is you do get some weird textures going on in the skin, so we're going to leave that at around -11. As for the vibrance and saturation, I like this image where it is. I can make it a little bit more vibrant if I want to, but at the moment we're probably just going to leave it at 0 because we're going to come back and do that in the HSL later. Now, if we want to see the sort of tone curve at the end, we're going to leave to the end, and the HSL we're going to leave to the end where we do the final really important adjustment. So if you want to see that, wait until the end of this live stream just to see that. Okay, so split toning. If you don't know what split toning is, the idea is we're going to introduce a certain color into the highlights. Now, I haven't got Brandon WOELFEL's photos up, but if you want to, you can go ahead and look at his Instagram. And the idea is he has some soft sort of teals or purples in his highlights, and again, the same in the shadows. So we're going to do that here. And we're just going to start off with saturation at about 10%. If you press Option or Alt on your keyboard and you drag this slider along here, you can see the colors that you're going to add to your image. So I think I'm going to either add a sort of magenta-y pink, or I'm going to go for teal in the highlights. I think I'm going to go for about 186. And then in the shadows, I'm probably going to add something like, actually, I think the blues might work a little bit better in the shadows. So teals in the shadows, and then pinks, I think, in the highlights, like that. And it doesn't make too much difference. It's just a sort of nice little effect it can add to the image. So if you turn it off and on again, you can kind of see very, very slightly effective, especially if you look on the face. Okay, so we're going to close the split toning, and next we're going to do something kind of interesting. We're going to come to the camera calibration. Now, one thing that you might want to do is do a nice orange and teal, and I think orange and teal is going to work really well on this image, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. This isn't a Brandon WOELFEL sort of color grade the orange and teal, but you can, or some of his photos have got orange and teal actually, but you can, I'm just going to show you how you can do that now. So you can come to this red primary, you can drag that up to that +29 there, and you can get the blue primary and drag that down to about -49. In fact, with this image, you could go all the way for both sides and get some really wacky looking colors, but it does look a bit weird if you do that. Also, some effects, as you can see there, you can kind of go for like a sort of pink and teal, which I'll show you how to do now. If you drop the blue primary, you can get that down to about -60, and then actually you can get the red primary and slide that to the left, and again, you can get some really cool looks. Pink and teal is something you don't see very often, but I actually kind of like the effect you can get from it. If you scroll down through some of my old photos on my Instagram, you can see where I've done this before, and you can kind of get some interesting looks. As for this edit, I'm going to put a very small touch of orange and teal in there, mostly because I want to add some teals to this image by dropping down the blue slider. But we're going to leave it like that, and we're going to now move up to the tone curve. Tone curve, you can do one of two things. You can go for like a nice S curve. You can add some more contrast to your image like that. So just drag up the highlights. And if you're not on this tone curve here, just click on this button here. You may be on this one. You can edit in this one. It's the same one, but it's just, I find it a little bit harder to use than this one. You kind of have more control. So go ahead, use this one, and then you can just mess around with kind of boosting those highlights a little bit. We're just dragging it up there. And I'm going to try and center it using this point in the center. Don't really want it to move around too much, just to keep our midtones roughly where they are. I might drop them down a little bit like that. And then with the shadows, you can just move them around until you get something that you like the look of. And this is basically my usual editing routine. If I know I'm going to be doing a neon color grade, I know that I want the colors to pop. One of the ways of doing that is adding lots of contrast. So I just start off with my basics panel, get the white balance sorted out, and then I work on the contrast here with the highlights and the shadows, just sorting out all the exposure. And then I finally come into the tone curve just to add some more contrast in there. So you can kind of come to the bottom of the tone curve. You can really crush those blacks like this, kind of mess around a little bit and see where you can get. Now, in lots of our other videos, you'll see the tone curve is basically just a very simple 3-point curve. It kind of just follows an S shape. In this case, I've added a few more points in just because I'm looking at the image and I'm moving it around until I kind of get the look that I like. You can see it is sort of following an S curve, but we've also taken it back just a little bit every now and again. Now, one thing you can also do, which might look kind of cool in this image, make it a little bit smoother and soften it out, is to use a fade. And to do that, you just click on this last point here, and you just drag it upwards like that. And you can see we've introduced a little bit of fade. If I go too high, I'm going to get that negative looking effect. That's because of this point here. So you can always double click to get rid of that, and you can see the fade working a little bit better. Sometimes the fade can look quite cool in these neon photos. I'm just going to, just for sake of argument, just so you can see, I'm going to leave it about there and add some fade. If you actually drag it horizontally, you can also add some fade as well. So you kind of have like this horizontal X and Y sort of movement you can do with this point here. Don't go too far overboard, otherwise it can just look a bit weird. We're going to go for about there. leave that there. Okay, I did say I'm going to leave the split toning, sorry, the HSL to the end, mostly because it's the most important part, and I think you guys kind of going to get the most out of seeing that, so we can spend more time on it. So here, those of you who don't know, the HSL is basically you can change kind of each color, you can change the saturation of each color, and you can change the sort of exposure of each color. And I'm going to show you a couple of tricks with the blues that I like to do in a second or two. So with a hue slider, you can come onto the reds and you can drag down to get that pink look that I mentioned a minute ago, which actually does look quite cool. And when you do it with the HSL slider, some people wonder what the difference is between HSL and camera calibration. Mostly they do the same thing, but the best thing that really comes out of it is you have more control over the colors. With the HSL slider, I can just isolate the reds and adjust those, whereas with the camera calibration, if I drop down the red primary hues, I end up adjusting the oranges and sometimes a bit of yellows as well, mostly reds and oranges though. So with the HSL, you kind of have more control. So I'm going to drop the reds a little bit just because I kind of like the pink look it's giving off. The oranges, you can drag those up just to make the oranges a little bit more yellow or warm, or you can kind of go for that complete pink look that I mentioned earlier. This completely depends on your preferences, and I do recommend just go on to WeSaturate and just sort of search for neon, and you'll see this photo, download the raw photo and follow along with this edit and play around and see what you can do. Also, don't forget, like I said at the beginning, go ahead and check in the description, top link in the description for our whole shot preset pack. You can see it here. You get 90% off. That's every single preset in our store, and that includes the Brandon WOELFEL presets. Here, Alan Palander, just basically every single preset, all of these ones here are in that pack. So definitely go ahead, check that out if you have some time. Right, now we're going to move on to the yellows. And yellows, again, really, it just sort of personal preference. I'm going to drag them up just because I like the highlights that it puts down. You can see if I drag it all the way to the left, it makes it sort of like a flat orange / pink. And I want to kind of have some kind of sort of color contrast going on in this sign. At the moment, that's really where we're working because that's where the colors are. The skin tones, we don't have to be too careful at the moment with skin tones because this image is so vibrant. It is such a neon image. Skin tones don't really matter too much because obviously you've got so much color around, it's going to affect that quite a lot. So as for greens, really, again, so in greens, there's no real greens in this image. So we're just going to leave that and dump it wherever you like, to be honest, but 0 is probably a good place. Now, this is the fun part, is the aquas and the blues. Earlier, when I came to camera calibration, you see I dragged down the blue primary. If I just turn that off for a second, you can see what's going on with this image. It's very purple. The blue primary here, where I had it was about -40, -50, is very similar to the blues up here. So what I'm going to do is show you how to create the teal look, and then I'm going to show you how I would do the teal look. So teal look basically means you just drag the aquas to the left and the blues to the left, and you get this wild looking green teal look. So best thing to do in this case is decide how much you want the image to be teal. Sometimes people tend to go overboard. I think the best thing to do is drag down the blues a little bit because there are more blues in the image. The aquas aren't going to make too much difference. Those are most of the blue highlights there, you can see. And then I'm going to get the aqua side and I'm going to drag it the other way just to kind of even out those blues. So you kind of have this teal look, but you also don't lose the blues, if that makes sense. Put the aquas back to 0, you can see how much difference it makes actually just sort of sorting out those blues a bit. As for the purples and magentas, you can kind of go some more teal look, dragging it to the left, and it sort of sorts out this side of the face, or you can kind of just go completely pink. I'm going to leave it at about -4. As for the magentas, again, kind of does the same thing. I'm going to take it all the way to the right because you can see it kind of oranges out the skin a little bit more here. So we have kind of teal, purple, pink, orange, and then fading sort of a peachy color here. It just adds some more color to the image. So I'm going to do that for the magentas. Okay, finally, we're going to come to saturation. Saturation is a fun part, especially with these neon photos, because people tend to think if you want to go for a neon photo, everything has to be like maximum saturation. And obviously, if you do that, you get some weird looking funky stuff going on. So we're not going to do that. We're going to actually drag up the reds a tiny bit. We're going to drag up the oranges a tiny bit, make this sign really quite vivid. We're going to come down to the purples and magentas, and we're just going to drop those because we don't want the skin to be too saturated. We just want some sort of outline colors on the skin, but nothing too kind of crazy and out there. Now, the yellows and greens, we're just going to leave alone because there aren't really any of those in this image. You can actually just boost the yellows a bit just to kind of bring out these bits here. It might be quite nice. I'll just leave those at about 50. But for the aquas and blues, one thing you can do is you can boost the saturation in the blues and drop the saturation in the aquas. Alternatively, boost the saturation in the aquas and drop it in the blues. And what that can do is kind of give you this icy blue look, like that. I just keep messing around, add in some more blues, drop it off a bit. And what that's going to do is you can still see this image is predominantly blue, but it's not overpowering. It's not like some crazy blue like this. It just drops off a bit and makes it a little bit more of an icy blue. And then we've brought some back in with the aquas. Again, personal preference. You can, if you want to, just sort of boost those blues or put the blues up and drop the aquas, whichever one you prefer. I prefer this look, and I tend to do it in a lot of my photos, especially when I'm doing neon photos with lots of blue. Okay, that's basically so we don't oversaturate the image with blues. As for the luminance, to get the sort of icy look, you can come to the blues and you can just whiten those blues up, or you can whiten the aquas, I tend to do, and drop the blues, or put the blues very sort of like about 10% there. So I've put the aquas on plus 100 or about plus 70 actually, so we can keep some of the color in. And all I'm really doing is I'm thinking I want this image to have an icy blue look. And to get icy blue, I know I don't want to have it oversaturated in the blues. I want to have enough saturation. I know I want to have some sort of teal going on, but I also want to bring back in some of those sort of, I like to call sort of plasticky blues here. Bring those back in with the aquas, and then on the luminance, I know to get an icy blue I need some whites in there as well, and to do that I'm just going to increase the luminance in the blues or the aquas, and in this case there's less aquas in the image, so I'm going to do it in the aquas. If I do it in the blues, you can see the whole image just looks overly white and weird, so we're going to leave the blues at about plus 10% and aquas at about plus 80. Okay, and that is probably it. I can't really think of much more you can do with this. You can always mess around with the gradient. You can, add in a gradient here to make it a little bit darker, kind of draw your eye towards the center a bit more, drop the saturation a bit, maybe just add in some more saturation just in this local area here if you wanted to. And you can really mess around with that kind of look. Some more contrast might look kind of cool. And one thing that might look cool in these signs is some clarity. So just boost some clarity there, drag in the slider here, boost some clarity there, and the saturation. And what that's done is right at the beginning, you may remember I said don't put too much clarity or saturation in because the face can end up looking a little bit odd. But here we're using gradient sliders, and if you want a more in-depth tutorial on how to use gradient sliders, I'll do that in the future. But we're just kind of localizing the edit around these areas here and not actually affecting the face. So what I've done there is just added some clarity. I can then again also add some sharpness just to kind of really boost this Pac-Man sign here and here. And that's probably it. I'll put that in full screen mode so you can see that edit now. I definitely recommend going ahead and downloading this off WeSaturate. Just type in neon and you can get that download there. And just following through this edit, and you can really see how you can kind of get some cool looks with a neon color grade. It's not exactly brown and woeful, but it is very much like its sort of kind of flat looking style. One thing I'm going to mention is a little extra at the end. Come on to detail and you can add some noise reduction just to kind of make that image a little bit softer. Don't go any higher than 20% though, otherwise you're going to make it look a little bit plasticky. But that is it. I hope you did enjoy this video. I'm going to see if this video is good enough to leave up on the channel. If it is, you can then come back and just reference it later on. Don't forget, go ahead, check the description and go ahead and check out this whole shop pack. It is currently at 90% off. It won't always be on 90% off, and that is you can get every single preset on our website on there. So go ahead, check that out if you're interested. Where's this gone? Go ahead, check that out if you're interested. I will probably see you in the next video. Hopefully there will be one out tonight in a bit, so go ahead, check that out as well. Now let's see if we can end this live stream. So somebody's just asked, I know it's kind of rude, but I'm a slow learner. Can you guys post this on your channel so I can replay the lesson? Yeah, sure, mate. Don't worry. I will leave this left on the channel. You guys can go through it again and watch it if you want. Go ahead and just check out all of our other videos as well. So that's it. I hope you did enjoy. I don't know how many of you were watching this. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Let's end this. Stop. Stop.